I am Reverend James DeBoer at Tree of Life Faith Community, and today's message continues the theme of empire, ethnarchy, and mutuality, the three primary forces at play in American society in this moment. One of the most common responses that we hear while talking to members of our communities about the critical importance of voting and democracy is that elections are meaningless, just a choice between two wings of a privileged political class who have more in common with each other than they do with the voters. People who in the past have felt misled by politicians feel voting is a waste and see no reason to be upset if a political leader or a political party decided to cancel the elections and just rule by decree. Hasn't America always been dominated by special interests anyway, so why bother to keep up the charade? But for poor people, for women, for low-wage workers, for seniors, voting and democracy at key moments in our nation's history has allowed the possibility of very serious and meaningful strides in struggles for dignity and equality. To name just a few, it was through democracy and voting that women won the right to vote in 1920 through the 19th Amendment to the Constitution. It was through voting and democracy that workers won the right to form labor unions through the Wagner Act, passed during the Franklin Delano Roosevelt administration in the Great Depression, and also, at that time, was the passage of the Social Security Act. Who we elect can make a difference in our lives, and so too can advocating for or against legislation. And yet, as important as democracy is for so many reasons, the past few months have made it very clear that many of our nation's leading institutions are mostly ambivalent about it. This might be surprising to some people, but shouldn't be. For as long as anyone can remember, major corporations, banks, law firms, academic institutions, healthcare organizations, nonprofits, etc., have all talked a great deal about respect for the rule of law and America's democratic institutions. So much so that you might have believed they meant it. In fact, why corporations and related organizations hammer home a reverence for law in America has always been so that they can use the law to bully Americans and continue pulling money out of poor people to give it to rich people. The only way to possibly get away with that until recently has been to convince us that the very laws they are using are legitimate because they are the result of the democratic system, where supposedly the people make the decisions. But as soon as pretty much any of these institutions has been forced to choose between adhering to its stated values of democracy and rule of law, or curry favor with the administration and secure business advantages and avoid lawsuits, they all fold with barely a whimper, like a bunch of dominoes. As institution after institution has crumbled, we understand that these institutions serve a ruling class more interested in money and status than liberty and justice. Has this always been the case? At various moments in American history, different factions of corporate leadership representing different industries have realized that electoral government suited their needs more than an authoritarian system would, because under electoral government, each faction may vie for influence and government handouts. But if all power becomes centralized, in principle, nothing stops the government from favoring some industries and disfavoring others. And so, in place of dividing up political leaders by where they stand politically, it may well be just as informative to divide them up based on what industries give them their largest campaign contributions. Now that is shifting, and the corporate leadership class have grown tired of electoral politics, and many of them are openly talking about dictatorial rule. Perhaps this is because the major commercial and business interests are so aligned that they are less concerned about being shut out of an authoritarian system and more confident than they were before that if they can choose the right businessman, that person will usher in a golden age of corporate domination over everyone else. And so we find ourselves in a moment when most of the institutions we might have turned to for leadership and guidance are simply not providing it, because their heart is not in it. This leaves us with a new reality. First, the responsibility to speak up about democracy, free voting, and the right to advocate falls back on us because nobody else is doing it. Once they take away our voice and our vote, our status becomes little different from that of peasants in the fields of medieval Europe under the thumb of the manor lord, or fourth-class passengers for those of you that saw Snowpiercer. But also, maybe some of you will find that you're part of an organization that is right now deciding whether to compromise its values in the name of going along and getting along. So my message to you, if that describes you, is that truth and justice are going to require ruffling feathers. Keeping your head down is not how women earned the right to vote, nor how Social Security came into being, nor how anybody ever got a union, nor how black Southerners won integration and the right to vote, and certainly not what Jesus did when confronted with the injustices of his day. But if the empire and those who align with it say to you, let's just keep our heads down, what they're really saying is, on the whole, they like what's coming. Peace and perseverance to you. Amen.